Today we have with us Mr. Ranjit Raina, who holds 28 years of experience across television, production houses, and experiential industry. Currently, he is the CEO of Geometry Encompass, which is a very well-known experiential marketing agency. He has worked with very well-known brands like Nokia, Pepsi, GSK, Hyundai, and Mercedes-Benz, to name a few. To pursue his entrepreneurial passion, he founded Radical, an experiential marketing consultancy, and joined brand with another young agency as a partner. Thank you, Mr. Ranjit, for joining us.
Thanks so much, Nama.
So, Mr. Ranjit, I would like to start with my very first question to you, and I want to understand from you what has been the impact of COVID-19 on the experiential marketing.
So, I mean, as you can well imagine, the experiential marketing business is a business of, engaging with people one-on-one, one-to-many. It's all about human interaction and human engagement. And with the pandemic, that is something which is a complete no-no. First we had the lockdown, and now we are in a state of unlock. But social distancing, is the norm. So which means that you have to completely relook at the experiential business, because it's almost as if somebody hit the pause button and it just, stopped mid-stride right in the middle. And so it's completely being reimagined as we speak right now.
Okay. So do you think that brands will cut down their experiential spends in a big way if the COVID crisis persists in the coming days?
So I think it's really not a question of brands cutting down an expense. It's more to do with the fact that, that avenue is not available right now. So, brands have to relook at how they would do the same thing in this current environment. So it's really about understanding that how do you create an experience that is supposed to connect with people, engage with people, drive human connections at a time and a place where we are telling people not to do that, where we are telling people, stay safe, stay indoors, don't congregate. So it's really a function of, the question is really that, what are brands going to do? Because they still need to do that. They still need to reimagination begins.
We've seen an upsurge of virtual events in the past 3 months. So what do you think that are they getting enough sponsors? And from the point of view of sponsorships, will virtual events do well in the coming time as well?
So I think if you really look at, if you begin from, events and intellectual property and how it worked in our country, it was predominantly the business model was supported by sponsors, and ticket sales was a smaller piece of that revenue model. Now, as you move online, it changes a lot of things. It changes, how talent comes and interacts and engages. It also changes, production costs and inputs. So which means that your revenue model changes because of the cost structure having changed. So in some cases, we are seeing like a ticket-based model working just as well to recoup costs, and you don't really need a sponsor. Maybe for a more ambitious project, you could need sponsors. But again, sponsors are always going to look at an event or an intellectual property in terms of what is it going to deliver to them, and what is the promise of that property. Does it put them in touch with a community or a group of people that they want to engage with? So it's a lot of, it's very different. You can have Hamilton on Broadway, and that's a $400 ticket. And you also have Hamilton on, Disney Hotstar. And, that's a much cheaper, but it's a different experience. In some ways, the same experience. And then you have a live play that happens on a platform like Zoom, where people can actually engage with the play and while it's happening. So these are all different experiences. I think that we are all figuring out different revenue models. We are figuring out different ways, because each time you're doing something, you're learning a little bit more. So are brands and sponsors.
Definitely. So I want to ask you that what have been some of your biggest learnings of the current situation? If you could tell me three of your biggest learnings.
So I think the first learning really is that from where everything begins, especially when you're moving into the virtual. The first learning is that uh, a virtual event is not a replication of a real event. The real world and the virtual world are two different spaces. We need to understand how people react and behave and engage in spaces, and then reimagine the experience. So, to imagine if it worked in the real world, you're just going to replicate it. That's not going to happen. I think learning too that we saw early on, and we learned from some content creators who were, experimenting, is that there's a very big difference in being present and participating. So, I could fire up my laptop, go on to an OTT channel or a YouTube, and I can watch and consume as much content as I want. From cat videos to movies to anything else. But participation is very, very different. Uh, so, understanding that difference becomes very critical. And I think the third, really important thing is that we always need to remember that how are we enabling that human connection, which is what makes it a live experience and not just, an engagement with packaged content. It's about, can we create moments for, people, groups of people, cohorts within that audience to actually get a sense of community during that experience.
Okay. So in terms of geometry encompass, what has been its approach to deal with the pandemic, and what are some of the new initiatives that it has come up with?
So, like everybody else, I mean, somewhere in, as April was setting in, we all realized that the pandemic isn't going anywhere. So we began with, creating a practice for, the live virtual events, which we call Prodigy. And Prodigy really tries to take the learnings from our past, 20 years of doing events and creating experiences, and our other practices, because we also have, a rural practice, a retail practice, and a shopper practice, and taking these learnings from across and understanding the difference between a consumer and an audience, to really start creating these experiences which can rest online. And like everybody is, it's a journey, and you're learning as you go along, and you have to keep on course correcting.
Sanjeev, what are some of your suggestions for smaller agencies, or what do you think? How do they deal with this situation? The smaller agencies, the agencies which are just coming up.
So see, I think at a certain level, a smaller agency actually has a great advantage in a time like this, because I'm imagining that if you're small and young, you're also much more agile. So you need to understand, the shifts and changes. It is not to say that the entire industry and experiential is going to go digital forever, but in the short term, definitely, it seems that this is going to be a very important platform and space. So you cannot avoid that. I think, big or small, you know the faster the learning curve, the more you learn, the more you see, the better it is. And the best way to learn is really to see everything that is happening across the board, see what works, see what doesn't work. Because if you are a person who has been creating experiential projects and working on experiential projects, you would instinctively be able to learn and recognize things that work and things that don't. Um, so I think it's really, this pandemic is really a big leveler. So at a certain level, at a creative level, big or small, you're all at the same starting point, and you have to, whoever best reimagines that experience in that moment will always shine.
Do you see that there are some new demands or certain things that brands ask for due to the current situation? Are there any
So
new
I think
brand demands from the brand side?
I think it really goes back to, why did or why do brands look at experiential as an important part of their marketing mix? And the reason is that it allows you to connect with your consumer in a very different manner. It is active, it is participative, there is a give and take, it is not passive. And so the brand demand is really the same, of saying that because a certain kind of experience is unavailable, it's because it cannot be deployed in a certain way, but that does not mean that they don't want to engage with the same consumer or the same community. And so the demand really is that how do we do that? And how do we use technology to do that? Can we use a virtual platform to do that? Do you want to use technology like voice to do that? So basically, you look at what you want to do, you consider all the limitations that we have because of, travel, time, space, moving people, and then you see what do you have available, and which is why the screen has suddenly become, really coveted real estate for experiential marketers also. And when you're on the screen, you're competing against content, you're competing against traditional marketing, you're competing against a lot of stuff which already rested on it. So how do you differentiate, and how do you get people to engage with you?
So, can you tell me about some of the challenges that have been that you faced in the past few months?
I think the single largest challenge for all of us really is the fact that even in the virtual event space, depending on the severity of the lockdown, that limits your ability to really explore the space to its full potential. And otherwise, even in the digital space and the virtual space, you will see that over time these experiences will continue to get more and more evolved, more and more immersive. Right now we're just skimming the surface because we are all operating under various the conditions are such, but as the unlock becomes more, you have access to shooting floors, you have access to actually meeting people, you have access to doing stuff, you can layer it with a lot of other elements of technology which can all come together. So I think really the biggest challenge right now is this inability to move freely in the physical space, because even the virtual experience is created physically by people. And see, when you limit that, it kind of limits what you can do. But I think when I look at some of the stuff people are doing, it's quite amazing how technology is being leveraged right now.
Okay. So my last question is that how do you think the road to recovery will pan out for experiential agencies, and what is the way forward from here?
So I think, of course, the very first thing is, to get a sight of, uh, when this, when the pandemic, will end. And now this is, my guess is as good as yours. And, it could be 2 months, it could be three, it could be four. But the fact of the matter is that experiential would have changed, and it has changed and is changing. So, and when I say that, I don't mean that it's all going to become virtual and digital. Absolutely not. I think people crave human connections. People want to be with other human beings, and you know, so that will find its own space. I think what will really emerge in the post-COVID world is the hybrid event, where everything that we do will have elements of the real and the virtual, and they will actually make those experiential projects much more deeper, because you will be able to extend that connection with that audience and that community far after you have left the physical space, and you will be able to create opportunities for them to, or vice versa, where you could begin virtually as a physical manifestation, where people come together. So I think a lot of these developments will take place. A lot of evolution in the virtual event space is actually yet to happen, and we will only see that once the post-pandemic things than the physical world. And so I think it's going to be a very interesting time, because the whole experiential space is being reimagined.
Very rightly said. As you said, that hybrid model is something that will come up post the pandemic, which means that our physical events will be supported by the virtual events, and we'll have a much nicer experience to provide. Thank you so much, Mr. Ranjit, for joining us, and it was a really lovely time. I had a really lovely time speaking with you. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Pleasure meeting you.